Hello and welcome to our session today, where we raise the question how machine learning is able to influence existing end-to-end processes in an existing shared service framework environment. So my name is Nick and I'm part of SAP's IDG, so Intelligent Delivery Group, and I'm taking over such responsibilities and projects related to S/4HANA, shared service framework implementations and machine learning projects. So for today's session, first of all, I would like to do a little bit of stage setting, right, to give you some insights about the shared service framework, and in the end, going a little bit deeper into a specific end-to-end scenario, and finally, giving you some details regarding our AI business services. So first of all, the shared services framework. So if you are talking to customers, for example, mid-size or global customers, they all have to deal with different kind of stakeholders. In the end, with internal stakeholders like your own employees, which are raising some questions related to their salary or whatever, and also external stakeholders like customers or vendors. In the end, it doesn't matter which is the question or the inquiry or the exception about. Doesn't matter if it's finance, HR, procurement, general ledger, inside of finance, or KMCC, or car fleet, or whatever. In the end, you would like to find a solution for the question. And therefore, you need a single point of truth, a single point of entry, right? And this is the layer, what we can see here. It's more like a service management tool. And the shared service framework offers a lot of functionalities and capabilities to taking over this tasks in the end, right? To forward a question to the responsible person with the capabilities to answer the question. In the end, we have to split the questions to find a solution more on a granular way, right? Typically for finance, you build business areas like accounts payable, accounts receivable, general ledger, whatever, right? Because in the end, you would like to identify a team which is able, based on their soft, hard skills, etc., and their know-how, to answer the question, right? You do it like this. Example, if you have a question from a vendor related to a status of an invoice, it's always in the accounts payable area, and it's related to one work list because there's one team which is able to answer the question related to status of the invoice. And now the big deal and the game changer is here to raise the question, where is the place for machine learning, artificial intelligence, IRPA, etc. And that's the main question. So we have to identify, based on the business area, high volume processes, including high manual activities. And this is the starting point also for our session today. We stick to the vendor inquiry process. The typical process is really easy. You are buying some good from a vendor. The vendor is sending you the good, and at the same time, the invoice. You're paying this invoice and everything is fine, right? The vendor can clear their items. But what's in case of an exception? If you're receiving, for example, 1,000 vendor invoices and only one is missing, for sure, the vendor will raise a question. When do you pay my invoice? And that's exactly the challenge. You have to establish a process in the end, right? What you can see here, in the end, receiving the email, creating a ticket. The ticket is more like a container from our shared service perspective, and it contains every information you need to finalize the process with the solution in the end, right? The agent has to capture everything, read the email, etc., extracting relevant content, searching in the backend transaction, like your ERP system or an S/4HANA system, right? Finding the right invoice. And in the end, preparing everything, sending a response, and close the ticket. And if we're talking about an amount, right? 2,000 vendor inquiries on a daily basis, that's normal for a global company. And if you need 5 minutes per each, this is a very hard process with a lot of manual activities inside. And the saving potential is very high because if you are able, right, to kick out manual activities by using machine learning to make 4 out of 5 minutes, this is a massive saving potential. And exactly this are we doing. We're using machine learning to read the email, to extract the content out of it, pre-categorize the ticket, extracting relevant details like who's the vendor, or what is the invoice about, the invoice number, bringing everything into a pre-configured ticket so that the agent don't have to look. And we are creating essential business value by combining both worlds, extracting and using the extracted details out of the incoming email and the attachments, for example, and bringing it together with your business application like the S/4HANA Shared Service Framework, via creating relations between the extracted details and the existing master and transactional data out of your system. Finally, what we also can offer is an auto reply, for example. If it's an easy question related to an invoice status, which was already paid yesterday, then there's easy going. You can directly raise an email based on a mail template. It's already paid. And I would like to go a little bit deeper into this scenario, right, with our demo. Now let's have a closer look into an existing end-to-end scenario for a lot of our customers. So what I already mentioned, that for example, the vendor inquiry process is an end-to-end process where you receive a lot of inquiries in a shared service organization. Yeah, for example, some of our customers, they're receiving 2,000 vendor inquiries on a daily basis. So this is a huge amount, and it also includes manual effort. So what we are doing now is, we are trying to demonstrate this end-to-end scenario and how machine learning is able to step in and to take over manual activities. So for example, we need here two roles. In the end, the first role is the vendor. The vendor has a question, is writing an email. First of all, a question regarding the existing invoice, which is still not paid. And additionally, the vendor will attach a new invoice. And on the other hand, the second role, this is in the accounts payable area in our shared service organization, the agent. And the agent is trying to find a solution for the vendor inquiry. So what I will do here, so as a vendor, I'm typing in a target address, which represents in the end the shared service organization for the accounts payable question. Then I'm typing in, for example, a subject, question on invoice, a body, so I'm writing an email. Hi, I have a question on the status of invoice SAP X and 0014515. This is a real one because we would like to create the business value in the end, to use machine learning to extract this value, this invoice number, and to directly create a linkage between the existing document inside of your ERP or S/4HANA system. Could you please be so kind to answer? Best regards, Nick in that case. And this is the first part, the question regarding the existing invoice. And now I will attach a second invoice. And if I have a closer look to this invoice, this is a new one, right? So, and the interesting part is here, we would like to extract via machine learning this invoice number, INW 17058. And that's all for this part. So now I'm sending this email to the shared service organization. Now I switch the role from the vendor perspective into the role to an agent. So what does it mean? Now I'm in my shared service organization in the accounts payable, and I'm receiving this incoming email. So what we can see here, this is the new item. For our case here, the shared service framework, as I mentioned already, is more like a service management platform, and it provides a lot of details and a lot of functionalities. So what we can see here, for example, there's already a categorization in place, right? So the reason for it is that based on the email, the first machine learning service ticket intelligence was extracting the context of the email and provides a categorization. So as a result, the email was routed
to the right or corresponding person inside of the shared service organization. What we can see here in this note section is nothing more than the email, right? With the existing invoice number and also the attachment. But if we go to the machine learning section here, we can see two entries. The first one was extracted by the Business Entity Recognition Service. So the BR was analyzing the text of the email and extracts this reference number, which we provided. And finally, here we can see the real business value, because the BR was able to extract the right value, and our shared service framework as business application was able to provide the real document in my system. It doesn't matter if we're talking about an ERP system, S/4HANA system, or another system which is integrated or connected to the shared service framework. So for our case here, we also can see that the posting is already done. So in the end, the vendor should already receive the payment. But if you would like to check it a little bit deeper, we are opening the link in this case, and you can see the real corresponding document right here with the document number, which represents in the end the link of the shared service framework environment, the document date, the posting date, the fiscal year, etc., and also the reference number. In some of the cases, if an invoice was not paid, then, for example, there was an exception or whatever, for example, an approval is missing, then the easiest way is to check here, for example, the workflow. If the workflow is completed, for our case here, yes, the workflow is completed, but maybe in some cases there are approvals missing. And in the end, the message here is we're able to exchange every information we need, and every information which is here available on the FI document. We can directly bring it into the shared service framework for every case or every requirement where it is needed to answer the question. So now let's go back into my ticket. So as a result, we directly can answer the question, so the first part of the email, that for our case, for this reference number, the payment was already. So therefore, we can go directly to the email functionality of the shared service framework. So the shared service framework offers a lot of functionalities, and one of the functionalities is here in email editor. So and now, regarding the advantage by using those functionality, for example, we are able to use mail templates. So this mail templates in the end is able to use the existing information which we collected for this specific invoice number, and we directly can paste in predefined email. So what you can see here is that the invoice was transferred to this email template, and also the information that the payment run was already. So now finally we can send this email to our vendor. So now, just to summarize what we did so far is, we received an email with two questions in. The first one regarding an existing invoice. How is the status of my invoice? Or what is the status of my invoice? And the second question was, here's a new invoice. Could you please proceed this invoice? For the first part, we were able to check based on the invoice reference number and the related document that the posting was already. And this was also the answer. And in the end, the solution for this question. And now the second question is, what's regarding the new invoice? What we can see here in the second line is that the document information extraction service was able to extract the right number regarding or out of the incoming document. But what we also can see here that the confidence is only maybe not high enough. So now the next step could be to validate if the numbers are correct or not. And therefore we are switching into a correction UI based on the document information extraction service. What you can see here is the brand new document information extraction annotation UI. And this is exactly the invoice which we attached to the initial email. And you can see here that also the corresponding and important information are marked. So the INW17058 was extracted as invoice number, or we can call it here document number. Additionally, you have the possibility or the option to include much more attributes than shown here. But for our case, the most important part is this one. And you can see here, this is the overall document and the marked invoice number. So in the end, from a technical point of view, we are handing over this number to the shared service framework. And this is not only an annotation UI, it's also a correction UI. So for example, if an invoice number was not found correctly, then you have the chance to mark it here or also to correct it, and then send these details back to your SSF, to the shared service environment, to use the new information. Or also here, to directly hand it over, for example, to the vendor invoice management, or directly to your FI transaction to post this document. Okay, so, and now going back to my shared service framework environment. Now, just to summarize, as a result, related to the initial email with two parts in. First of all, from a shared service perspective, from an agent perspective, we were able to answer the question regarding the status of the invoice. It was already paid. And regarding the second part of the email, capturing the new invoice, that's already done. So in the end, with the help of machine learning of different kind of SAP AI Business Services, STI, BER, and docs, we were able to automate this process, at least in some parts of this process, because the agent don't have to step into the notes, or you can see here the email, or you don't have to read the invoice. It's everything possible. Automation happen by using machine learning.
So just to summarize, as a result, what you have seen so far in this demo is that we bring this process on the next automation level. And this was not only our idea. So one of our customers, BMW, was raising this question 1.5 years ago. So SAP, are you able to support this process with machine learning? And then we started a co-innovation together with BMW, right? Exactly for the vendor inquiry process. BMW now is live with more than 150 persons and people inside of their shared service organization, and they are reducing their daily workload regarding the vendor inquiry process between 20 to 25%. And this is a significantly increase of the automation, right? And in the end of the reduction of the manual efforts. But now let's have a closer look to the AI business services, also from a technical point of view. The SAP AI Business Service is more like a portfolio related to different kind of services. What we've seen so far in our demo was that we're using service ticket intelligence, right, to categorize the ticket in the end and the email. We used the document information extraction service to analyze the PDF and to extract details related out of the PDF, like the invoice number and the vendor. And finally, we also use the business entity recognition service to be able to read the unstructured text. But, and those are the good news, those are only 3 pieces in the end, which we combined to solve the end-to-end process vendor inquiry. If you remember to my first slide with the different kind of pillars, right, FI, HR, whatever, it doesn't matter. The only thing what you need is a high volume process with a lot of manual activities inside. Then, related to this process, you have to decide which capabilities you need, and in the end, which service. The ultimate target is always to create business value by combining your business application and the AI business services. From an architecture perspective, this is also really easy because on the one hand, you can see that we are using the S/4HANA Shared Services Framework as my business application. And on the other hand, we can see the SAP Cloud Platform with the capabilities of the SAP AI Business Services. And as I already mentioned, it doesn't matter. It's also possible to exchange the business application. For example, using a CRM sidecar solution or another ERP system. It's all about combining everything. Now let's stick to the next demo.
If we are talking to customers, right, in real customer projects, we are always facing the questions regarding, for example, an F1 score, accuracy, or at least the question, if we are extracting 9 out of 10 on the right way, what do we have to do to also get the last one? So, and from a machine learning perspective, this is a very difficult question, because if we are talking about a score around about 90%, this is not bad for a machine learning service, right? But the customer expecting always the 100%, but from a machine learning perspective, we're not able to deliver the 100%. For sure, we can try to get as near as possible, nearly to 100%. And as always, the customers are challenging us. If you remember to our vendor inquiry scenario, there was a really easy question on one, more like complex year invoice number, which was mentioning SAP ENV and the number, for example, 10 digits. The machine learning was able to extract this number. But often there is the case that the customer is telling us, yeah, but if I'm testing this machine learning service and 47 with the invoice number 4711, it's not working. The expectation of the customer, and for sure I can understood this expectation, that the machine learning service is able to solve this issue. Please let me show you this example. I'm switching here into my Postman. So I'm using the Postman to test my APIs or to use my APIs. And for our business entity recognition example, we can see here on the left side the capabilities, what I can do with the Postman, and in the end with the API for starting an easy question to the API, which is here in an interference job. Or train the model, create new data sets, and in the end to publish and deploy also new trained models. But step by step. First of all, I will copy and paste an easy example. I have a question regarding invoice 4711. Could you please be so kind to tell me the status? So the only thing what I have to do for the BR is to type in the text handing over the model ID and a version regarding to the model ID. Currently, I will use a standard one. So you can see it here. This is an SAP email business entity recognition model, which SAP is offering our customers. So in the end, in the first step, I'm handing over the question, and my expectation is that the BR is extracting the right value. So now let's checking a result. So what you can see here, the business entity recognition service was not able to extract 4711. The question is why? Because, for example, this invoice number is not a typical invoice number. Okay, so the customer is raising the question, but why it's working if I'm using this number? Let's check it. So I'm handing over a longer number with the same model and also the same version, etc. So now the expectation would be, if it's working with a longer one, then for sure, why not with a shorter one? Right? Let's check it again. So the BR is able to extract this typical invoice number with a very high confidence. It's really hard to bring this fact to the customer, but what you can do is you can train the model, right? And therefore, I would like to go deeper into an annotation UI, Locarno, and then how we can use new annotated details and data to train a custom-specific model, which is also able to handle the shorter numbers. And the only thing what we can provide our customers currently is to tell them, okay, so if it's not good enough, then we have to train the model. For example, based on new annotated data, right? So that we are able to provide some metadata and some data to train the model, or some templates or template approaches or whatever. But currently, this is the only way to improve the score. And what we have to do to retrain or to train a machine learning service, this is honestly really easy, because typically we have everything in place. On the one hand, we have a business application. As I mentioned in our first case, or in the first scenario with the shared service framework, there are some tickets in place. So you are able to extract some details out of the ticket, or you are able to extract the incoming email, right? PDFs, whatever. In the end, you have to bring it into a format that an annotation tool is able to consume this data and these details. And for now, I would like to demonstrate how Docano is able to annotate data, which we can use as an outcome, influenced with some metadata, to train a model, right? So the only thing what we have to do here is to create a new project. I will name this project, for example, TechEd ML model training, or we can name it for BER, for the Business Entity Recognition Service, and we will do a sequence labeling. So we will label the attributes which are interesting. For example, if you're receiving or sending an email and we are typing in the invoice number, then this is our attribute of interest. And then we will create this project. So now we're in Docano, which provides us some functionalities to do the annotation. So as a next step, I will upload a file. Give me a second, I will do it right here. So now we have imported the data, and the next step is we have to create some labels, right? A label, in the end, we need a label to mark an attribute which is of our interest, right? So for our case, we would like to create a new attribute which is named invoice number, for example. And that's all. If you would like to extract more details like purchase order, vendor IDs, currencies, or whatever, for sure you can do this. But for our easy example, we will only go for the invoice number approach. Okay, so let's start the annotation. And what you can see here, this is the overall text. Yeah, for sure, a really easy one. But now double click to the invoice number. And that's all. I've labeled this attribute as an invoice number. And this is not a keyword matching or whatever what we are here doing. No, we are extracting in the end some information regarding in which position is the invoice number out of this text. And for sure, this typically you have much more complex here cases, for sure. But for our purposes, this is enough to train a really easy machine learning model. Now, going one step back and exporting the details. Then finally, with the exported file, we can directly upload this file to our Postman environment, start the model training, deploy the model, and then we're able to making use of the SAP AI Business Entity Recognition Service based on our new trained model. Therefore, I have to switch to my Postman environment, and now we can directly start to create a new model. Therefore, we have some restrictions, and the first one is we have to create a new data set. So the data set Yeah, we can provide a new name, for example, Shared Services Framework and TechEd. And now we're creating this new data set. Okay, so therefore we received a successful created data set, including a data set ID. And now we have to fill this data set with some documents. And this means in the end, the data set is more like a container. In this container, we have the chance to bring in some documents, and the documents are exactly the JSON file which we created by exporting it from Docano. So therefore I go into the documents and uploading a training document. Here I have to select the right one, and this is the example, and uploading the document. So now we were successfully able to fill our data set with our JSON file. And that's all for the second. And now we will starting this training job. Therefore, we have also the chance to create a new model and, for example, TechEd. So this will be our new model. Now we submitted the training job, and this means that there's a new entry inside of the training pipeline, and now the machine is working and is training based on the dataset, including the document, and in the end, including our JSON file. So, and as a result, we finally will receive the new model. Now we can go to get the training status, and if the model was successfully trained, then we will receive the new model, and we also can see the accuracy, and this one is very high because there was only one item in the end, right? And if we check one item against the same item, then it's no surprise that accuracy is only 1. Now, let's capturing the model name, because finally we have to deploy our model. So let's check my variables here. Oh, it's the right one. Right. Updated. And now this model is used, was deployed. Finally, we can check if our new trained model is able to extract the right invoice number. So therefore, I will start this interference job based on the new model. And now checking the result. And what we can see here, with the new model, we were able to extract 4711. So just to summarize what we did, we exported some data, for example, out of the shared service application. Then we used those information to bring it to Docano, create metadata out of the Docano results, exporting it into a JSON file, transferring it to the machine learning environment in the end, training a new model, deploying a new model, and now using the new model. And in the end, This is also from a customer perspective the right way to go, right? You can demonstrate the customer how easily the customer is able to improve the own machine learning model. In the end, it's always a combination, right? You need more and more data. For each machine learning model, which is not based on a template approach, you need as much data as possible, because then the accuracy in the end of the score will be higher. If there's more variance inside of the documents, then it's always better from a training perspective. And for sure, the first start could always be with a pre-trained model, but every customer have to validate if the accuracy and the score is high enough or not. If not, then go for the custom-specific model approach. And this is also scalable for every other process. Doesn't matter if we are talking about finance documents or HR documents or facility, car fleet, whatever. If we would like to extract, for example, here for the BER, attributes of interest, for sure it always matter which attributes I would like to extract. For sure there will be a difference between car fleet and, for example, finance documents like invoice inquiries. But in the end, it doesn't matter if I would like to extract a license plate or an invoice number, right? It's always a number in the end. So you have to check what are the real requirements from the customer perspective and what is the best way from a machine learning perspective to support this process.
So as a result out of this model training, we at SAP in our own shared service organization decided to go for the same approach, right? So we implemented a pilot in the end, and our own business gave us the feedback that at the beginning with the pre-trained model, we have a 60-40, right? So 6 out of 10 are correct. Then we go for the custom specific model training, and we enabled our business to train by their own a new model, extracting the details, annotation, and then training it. And then the results were really fantastic because the feedback and the feelings of the agent was 90-10. So 9 out of 10 are correct. So this was a very, very good outcome here. And we also recognized that 1 out of 4 emails is a new one. So it's not a question related to an invoice, to the status, it's a new one. So just to summarize quickly, what we're doing here is we're using the SAP AI Business Services together with an SAP application and business application, the S/4HANA. We would like to automate at least some parts of the process. In the end, to speed up the process by using the integration which is already there. And finally, to create much more business value out of it. And if you think and remember to my first slide, right, it doesn't matter about which area we are talking, finance, HR, procurement. Those are the good news. It's very scalable for every kind of process where you have a high volume process of many activities. You can decide which AI business service you would like to use to create business value out of it. I hope that you enjoyed this session, and I wish you all the best also from a learning perspective here, right? So please join other sessions, and I hope you can continue your learning session here. So thanks for your attention. Please stay safe and take care. Bye-bye.